is the ISO95 equipment hierarchy. So the first thing we're going to do is identify the enterprise. Inside that, I have one or more sites. Inside the site, I would have one or more areas. So here I've got like packaging or processing. In the area, I would identify the production lines, or the locations we're going to take samples, or storage zones. So we can right click and we can add these items. So here I've got line 1 and line 2. In my production line, I can add my cells or machines. So I've got my filler, capper, labeler, inspection, case packer, and palletizer. So this particular line is modeling a bottling line that we have out there. And so we have many different things in this model, but we're essentially identifying all the equipment that we have. On that, we can then go over here on the right-hand side and configure all of the MES modules. You'll see a tab for each of the modules over here. So there's OE downtime, there's quality, recipe, track and trace, all that's right there. So we're going to start with OE downtime. So if I look here on my line, I can click on the OE tab and I can see that it's configured. I specify the in feed counter and the out feed counter, so we know how much is coming in and what's going out of that line, so we're producing. I also down here specified how I did waste, and there's many ways you can customize that. Manually entering in the waste, looking at in feed minus out feed, summing up the waste from all the machines, or maybe we have a sensor in place to count the actual waste on the line. Various ways we can look at that. So on the line here, I have identified the important things, the tags we need to calculate this information. I did the same thing for my machines. On the downtime area here, each of my machines, I gave it a state, which is one if it's running, and anything other than that would be that it's in some downtime. And I specified all those different reasons here. And so we can, if that value goes to 3, I can see that's machine fault. We can specify all these with sub-reasons in here, and of course all the settings for if we want it to be planned or unplanned, if you want operators to select it from the runtime. So the idea is that we can identify all of our lines, all of our machines, and we can configure the various tabs over here for the different modules that we have in Ignition. So if I go down to my Site 2 and look at my packaging and look at recipe line Y, I configure this one for the recipe module. And I basically specified the set points, the tags that I want to write values down to, so for each of my machines and the line itself. For the track and trace up here under California, I have identified, storage areas like my vinegar tanks and oil tanks. I've identified lines for where I'm going to unload product. So the idea is to identify the equipment hierarchy here for ISO95, where we can do the configuration, some of the basic configuration for these that we're going to use in the modules. The idea is that by having this model, all the MES modules can work together. So when I'm looking at a particular production run for OE, I should be able to also look at what recipes were loaded down, what am I tracking for the track and trace, what samples have I entered in, all of that because it's all correlated back to that production line. So it's a really important model that all the MES modules will follow here. And we just identify some basic information, the model, and some of the tags that we can use for the collection of the data that's automatic behind the scenes. So as you can see, I've identified a couple of my production lines. And so for OE downtime in particular, I have line 1 and line 2. Now that I have the model in place, I can actually go to the runtime, to the screens, and that's where we're going to start and stop runs. We're going to monitor those runs. We're going to see the analysis. We're going to see all the dashboards and get a look at that data. So once we have that model in place, the rest of the information will be in the runtime here. So here's the runtime. This is the first project in the online demo server that is called IA Demo. And it basically showcases all the modules. It's designed to be a walkthrough of all the features of Ignition. And so it starts with the HMI SCADA layer with the real-time status control, historical trending and alarming and security and localization and database manipulation, reporting, and more there. Then if you scroll down, you'll see the MES layer here that we're going to focus on today. So I've got a project for OE downtime, I've got a project for SBC, for recipe, and for track and trace. Now, in our demo server, we've separated all those into different projects. But in the real world, when you use a combination of those modules, you're going to combine them all into one project. You're going to be able to customize how you want those screens to look. One important thing for the MES modules for Ignition is that you're not stuck with the screens that were here. You're not stuck with some of that configuration. You have the ability to go in there and customize it. It's the product, Ignition, the platform is flexible enough for that to happen. So I'm going to first start with the OE downtime module here. And with that, I showed in the designer the configuration of that production model. I had a couple of production lines already configured and where we specify the tags for the in feed and the out feed and how I'm going to collect the wait, the downtime. So that way, when we start a production run, Ignition knows exactly how to get the data from the PLC. So the first thing I want to show you here is I'm going to go to this product code screen. Once we identified that model, we're going to go in here and identify product codes. So here I've got quite a few different product codes. I can add some new ones, but I have product code 1, and we're going to enable that product code for various lines. So here that product code is enabled for line 1. Down at the bottom, we can specify what that standard rate is for OE downtime. So that's the rate we're going to use for the performance part of OEE. We can also identify the package count, which is the ratio of the in feed to the out feed. And if we're going to use scheduling, we can identify a schedule rate, which is different than the standard rate, the theoretical rate that we can run on, so that we use that to estimate how long it would take to complete a production run when we schedule it out. So we're going to identify one or more product codes, and we do that in the runtime because we may add new product codes in the future, and we want to specify what those rates are going to be, because every product can have a different rate on different lines. So this is very important here. You have to have at least one product code for the line before we can actually start collecting the data. Once we have this, we can start a production run in Ignition. A production run basically just says, for this line, at this time, with this product, we're going to start collecting information that we have configured in that model. And there are many ways we can start a production run. We can do it simply manually, where somebody goes and presses a button. So if I go, oops, here, I have a screen where I basically can start and stop. I just have some buttons here. I can select my product code from a drop-down list. I can then start a new run, and at that point, Ignition is told to go and collect all the information from the PLC. So very simple. I can do a start-stop this way. We can also start a production run automatically. Maybe I have a trigger in the PLC that is going to start that run, or maybe on a certain time of day you're going to do that. The most common, most popular is through a schedule. So if I go here to a schedule screen that we have, I can see a schedule of all of my production lines that I have, and I can see which ones are running right now, which ones aren't. So here I've got quite a few lines. Line 1, line 2, and line B are running. Line A is not. On the right hand side I can see the schedule entries. The dark blue ones are the ones that are scheduled out that we haven't run yet. The green ones are the ones that are running right now, and the light blue are the ones that are in the past. So the idea is here that I can right click and I can add a new entry for the schedule, and we can specify, let's say, a work order run or some other run. So we can deal with work orders, and so here I can select work order PC1A for product code 1. I can specify changeover duration like 5 minutes, and let's say I do 1,000 units. With that, we're going to estimate how long it will take to complete that run. So you can see the finish time here change. If I go to 2,000 units, it's going to increment some more. And that's based off that schedule rate that we put in there. We can also identify a workday routine, which has meals and breaks and various things that we're doing there. So now that I have that, I can save it. You can see that I've just now scheduled out a new entry on that line. Once we scheduled it, we can easily modify that. We can right click and edit. We can delete it. We can actually move it around to reschedule it onto different lines if that product code is enabled for that line. Very easy to work with the schedule here. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that entry. So as you can see on line 1, I have a couple entries. In line 1 and line B, I've got some entries that are scheduled out. Line 1 is currently running something right now. So the idea is that once we have things scheduled, we can then start and stop these runs. And we can do that automatically when it gets to the start of the run, or we can have somebody on the plant floor selecting the item from the schedule and pressing start and stop. And that's kind of what we modeled here in our demo project. So now that I've got these things scheduled, if I go down here to a screen that the operators would have on the plant floor, some day-to-day operation screens, this is where they can select a line and they can select the scheduled entry and they can start and stop based on that. So for example, if I go over here to line 1, line 1 is running something right now, but let's go ahead and end that one. I can go and select a new item from the schedule and let's go ahead and activate that run. It's going to go into the changeover time, and then when the operators are ready, we can actually press start. So what's important here is that we're actually tracking that changeover. If we go longer than 15 minutes, we're going to account that as downtime, and it's going to start eating into our availability if we want to or not. So I'm going to go ahead and start that run. Now everything is 100%. We're going to start seeing the data come through as far as what we're producing and looking at the OE and the downtime that's coming in. So if I go back here to line 4, that already has some more data. I can see right now live how much we produced. I can see my OE broken up by quality, performance, and availability. Again, all live numbers. I'm monitoring this current production run right now. I can see all the downtime that's happened on that line here and get a good sense of really what's happened. The operators can provide more detail for us by providing notes. So I can put here notes for the run, and I can add that in. I can also provide notes on individual downtime entries. We have the ability to override reasons. So especially if you have like an e-stop button that was pressed, you may want to allow the operator to go in there and say, hey, well, it's really because we had this calibration problem or a belt broke or whatever it might be. So we can allow them to provide more detail there. And we will track both the automatic reason that detected from the PLC and the manual reason that they overrode to. We also have the ability to split downtime into two. So let's say this reject lane full was actually, some of it was a calibration problem and the other was the reject lane full. So I can actually split that and provide more detail there. So this screen is a great one to monitor what's happening right now, as well as to provide some more data. The line chart screen we have up here is also another screen that a lot of customers like to put on TV displays. So they can, right above the line, they can see what's happening as far as hourly actuals versus targets and hourly efficiencies, a forecast of what we should be producing, and what we're actually producing, and a parade of our downtime here. So these two screens are where we can monitor the current production run. We can create more screens like this. The ignition, with all the MES modules, we provide to you components you can bring onto screens. We provide to you tags you can drag on, and you can really mix and match and bring all these together into one screen if you wanted to. Now if I go back to the schedule is another place that we can actually monitor the current production run. So here if I look at line 1, in particular, or if I go down line 4, since this one's been running for a little longer, I can right click on that run and I can see what did we schedule versus what we're actually doing. And so that's what we scheduled, and here's what we're actually doing. I can see the note that I entered in just a couple minutes ago, and if I zoom in I can actually see the downtime entries and what those reasons actually were. So we get a good sense of what we should have been doing versus what we're actually doing there. I can also go back in time. We can go to previous production runs. I can look at what was scheduled versus actual was for those runs. I can actually look at what our OEE and downtime was for those runs. I can look at what we produced as far as the production charts. I can get a lot of data on each of these. So every run that we start and stop, we collect all that data in the database, and the MES modules put all the data into a standard SQL database. That can be MySQL, Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle, Postgres, doesn't matter. We're going to create all the tables, we're going to log all that data, we're going to manage all that for you, and we're going to query it for you on screens for how you want to display it. So everything I've shown you so far is we've been looking at one run for a line. So I look at the current run, or I went back in time here and looked at a past run to see the actual data there. But the beauty of the OEE downtime is to figure out what are our biggest problems that we have out there across all of our lines, across all our machines. I want to look at multiple lines and multiple production runs together. And so for that, we're going to go to a set of dashboard screens that we have here. The dashboard screens will provide us a summary, as well as we can dive into some of the important information there. So the first 4 screens here are some summary screens that will allow us to look at the OEE and downtime broken out by, by something where we can basically bring it up and get an aggregation of our OEE or our downtime. So the enterprise summary is showing us the OEE and the downtime and our production and waste counts for all of our production lines for every site, all rolled into one number, and I'm comparing that number by day. So I can see if I look at a bigger time range down here by selecting that range, I can see if my OEE or my downtime is trending up or trending down. I get a good sense of that for everything that I have. And so I can see my OEE by day, my downtime, my production, my waste count by day. We can then go down to a site level and compare it by site. So we can look at site 1 versus site 2 and see which one has better OEE or worse downtime or better production, whatever it might be. We can look at the areas, and we can look at packaging versus processing, again comparing the OEE and the downtime there. Of course, we can go down to a line. So I can look at line 4 in particular. For the time period I've selected, I can see all of my runs for that time period rolled into one number for OEE. I can see my production here. This isn't broken out by day, so I can see how we're producing. I can look at my downtime by machine here. So now it's the first time we can actually see some machines in here. And I can look at my top downtime reasons, so a little Pareto of that. So these 4 screens here are provided for operators or managers to look at the data, kind of summarize data so they get a good sense of what's going on. And they were created, all they can do is just simply change the start date, and on the line screen they can just select which line they want to look at. But ultimately we can bring back data any way that we want. We can create any kind of summary screen that we want to look at. And this impromptu analysis screen really illustrates that. So first thing we can do is create a new report. So I'm going to call this my DT report. and I can bring back comment data, recipe data, quality data, downtime data, OEE and production data, whatever data I want to look at. So I'm going to say I want to bring back downtime data. And I can then select what data points I want to bring back. And we have a whole slew of them here that we can look at. These are all provided by Ignition. So I can bring back, for example, downtime minutes. And I can also bring back, let's say, number of occurrences. Two really important things for downtime. So for the time period I've selected down here, I can see the two numbers, downtime minutes and occurrences, for all of my production lines, everything rolled into those two numbers. I can then go up here and add a filter, so I can filter on a particular line or area or product code or shift or whatever I like to filter on. So say I go here and filter on line 1, I'll now see my numbers just for line 1. So I can remove the filter. I can also add a comparison. The comparison allows me to break up that data by some item. So I can break it up here by line, let's say, or I can break, where I can see the downtime now broken up by line. I can also go further and break it up then by shift. So I can see it by line, then by shift, how that data is actually broken out. So we have many options as far as what we want to look at, as far as data points, the comparisons, and the filters. We also have the ability to add our own items into this, our own data points into this, and we call those items additional factors. So this can be things like the operators running the line, the supervisor on shift, the cardboard vendor, the manufacturer raw material, the season of the year. Basically, any data you can get into a tag, we can log with our OE and downtime information. And we can come back and look at our downtime. We can compare it by the operator. We can compare it by that cardboard vendor. We can really see what's going on here. So it's a way for you to kind of extend the data that we have, add more context by adding more information that you can have out there along with what we're actually collecting in Ignition. So right now I'm looking at my downtime minutes and occurrences. I've compared it by line, so I can see it broken out here by line. I can view that data in a table. I can then export that data to CSV. I can also view that in a pie chart form as well as a bar chart form to show more than one data point. I can also look at a graph form. If I compare the data by a date, so here for example by day, I'll see it in a graph form, which is good to look at in some ways. So I'm going to go back here and look at the data by line and go back to my pie chart. Now these all support drilling down. So right now I can see that for my downtime minutes by line, line 1, line 4, they've got some downtime. Line B's got the most. So I can then click on the line. I can drill into something. I say I want to drill into the cell. I can look at the downtime now by machine. I can see the filler's got the most downtime here. Click on the filler. What's the reason detected from the PLC? So I can see scale faults happening most of the time. Well, I click on the scale fault. Well, what shift is it happening in most? Oh, it looks like it's pretty even here on the shifts. I can go back, well, who is the operator running the line? So that's an additional factor. I can look at that and see maybe it's a training problem. Maybe one operator needs to understand how to run that line more efficiently. So we can certainly go and look at the data any way we want by drilling down here. And all it's going to do is change the comparisons and the filters over here on the left-hand side. So right now, for example, I'm looking at the downtime by the machine just for line 1. If I remove the line 1 filter, I can see my downtime now by all the machines we have and all of our lines. I can also then go here and look at the downtime by just simply the automatic reason. And maybe I want to filter out the top 5. So here's the top 5 reasons in that time period for all of my lines, all of my machines that we need to look into. So we can actually then further save this analysis. So we can have a whole bunch of these we can go back to. So I can go look at, for example, I have OEE here by operator, good in a pie chart or bar chart form. I have the OEE by day. I can look at it in a graph form. I have some other ones like a little downtime report here that I can look at. Just different ways we can bring back the different combinations of the data points, comparisons, and filters there. So a really powerful way of looking at any data you want to bring back here. We can use this idea to create other summary screens, because these summary screens were just basically they're little pie charts and bar charts that we specified the same data. What data points we want to bring back, how do we want to compare it, how we want to filter it there. The same data that we bring back here can be viewed in table form, pie chart form, bar chart, or graph form. It can also be viewed in a PDF form. So I can actually go make a PDF report that I can print or save automatically or manually here. And so I've got a couple examples here. I've got a shift report for the line I've selected for the day. I can see each shift, what those numbers look like. I can look at an OE report, so I can see the OE broken out by line, by day. I have a downtime report that shows me by line, by all the reasons. what that looks like. So there's a plethora of ways we can bring back that data that's been collected. So the important thing is here we identify that model, we can identify how we're going to collect that data from the PLC, we can start and stop runs, ignition, we can monitor those runs right there live, and then we can come back and do our analysis and look